So what I wanted to talk about today was why we shouldn't point our feet into a Theraband. Now I know that sounds a little controversial because just about every dancer in the world has been taught to do it at some point or other. And it's not that it's a bad exercise, it can be done really well. However, 90% of the time when I ask people to demonstrate what they're doing it in a way that's more detrimental than it is beneficial. So I wanted to explain a little bit about this and give you some other options. So the biggest problem with pointing into a Theraband is if the toes are scrunching. Really important that we don't do this. If we are clawing the toes, we are actually using one of the muscles that sits up deep in the back of the calf. Overuse of this leads to lots of issues around the back of the ankle, where a lot of dancers have problems anyway. And the irony is, it's often when they're getting really tight in the back of the ankle, they're told you need stronger feet, so then they start doing more and more exercises to try to strengthen their feet, and they actually make the problem worse. So I want to go through what we should and shouldn't be looking for if we are pointing our feet in a Theraband, and an alternative exercise that gives much greater benefit and far less risk, which I think is always a good idea. So the way I explain this also is for teachers or for anyone who has been teaching this exercise before. It's not that it is bad and it's not that it is wrong, and going back on your words sometimes feels a little uncomfortable. However, I do it all the time. In practice, there are things that I used to do that I don't now do. And I explain it to kids when we're changing things in that it's like a software upgrade. If you think of what we used to do, it's like iPhone 4. It was great at the time and it was the best we knew at the time. But now we've had multiple software updates and hardware updates as well. So we're now up to iPhone 7. You can still use an iPhone 4 if you like, but if you'd like to move on and do a faster, more efficient, less risky way of strengthening your feet, then I think it's a good idea to help modify some of the things that we always used to do. So we're just going to have a look at what you can do and what you shouldn't do. So if we place the band around the foot, the biggest problem is that when a lot of people point forward, they scrunch their toes under. The band is then pulling back, you can get compression at the back of the ankle, and we're actually training the ability to claw the feet. This is not something that we want to advocate. Most of the issues we see in the foot and the ankle are due to a lack of intrinsic foot control and too much clawing. So we don't really want to practice that any more than they're already doing. What we want to see if they're doing it well is pointing into the band and then lengthening the toes so that they stay long, peeling back through the toes and then releasing the heel, ideally not hyperextending the knee at the same time. So if you can do that, it's not going to be that bad, but the risk of people doing it poorly, if they're sitting and watching TV at the same time and just flailing their foot around, I think is a little bit too risky. So instead, I like to use the band in a slightly different way. So we place it on the outside of the foot, pop a small ball in between the knees, use this support, and then this one is doing the point through the demi-point exercise. So we're getting that feeling of articulating the foot, but the band is pulling the foot this way, so I'm actually strengthening up the outer border. This is really good for young students who tend to sickle out when they're on demi-point. And it's also much better than just pulling outwards into the band, because this can build up a lot of extra tension on the outside. So sitting up nice and tall, relax through the front of the hips, legs lengthened yet not hyperextended, point to the demi-point, point the toes long, flex the toes, and then release the heel. And I find that's a much safer way of training those feet if you want to improve your foot and ankle control and minimize the risk associated with overclawing or overfishing the foot.